Good morning, friends, and welcome to day 3 of our conference, the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, FNMPC, National Conference on Indigenous Capacity Building and Impact Assessment. Thank you for taking time to be with us over the last number of days that we've been working together on this important topic. I want to just remind people of the rules of engagement that we've been using since the beginning of our session to create a safe, respectful container for our dialogue to occur. I want to ask that we offer out-of-the-box thinking, particularly during the breakout sessions that we're going to be hosting this morning. Jump in and offer your thoughts. Listen generously to what your peers are going to be saying, and for any improvement areas that we identify, and we know that we can always improve. When we identify those areas, please be prepared to offer a solution so we don't get stuck in the problem. Again, just the process is only as strong, the conference is only as strong as level of participation received from each of you. So please jump in and actively participate, particularly in the breakout sessions. In those sessions, be hard on issues and soft on people, where we challenge ideas and not people. In the room, you're going to be generating some great ideas. So when we do, build on those ideas and take them as far as you can. And as always, be on time when returning from breaks. We start off with a little bit of cartoons to hopefully create a little bit of laughter and levity for us at the beginning here. And we know that this is...
It just says this day 3, February 11th slide.
Okay, well, I'm marching through my slides right now. Can you see that? Kelly?
It's just black and says Dan George has started screen sharing.
Nothing?
No.
Okay. Well, my apologies with that. Why don't we just segue into the Young Thunder drum group. I want to raise my hands in respect to all the territories that we're gathered around coast to coast to coast. And let's turn it over to the Young Thunder drum group from Saskatchewan. Thank you.
bata te ayutsi hey 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 oh hey oh hey oh que say kawinatia, hey kwata dea yutsin, hey hi hey oh hey oh hey oh.
So that's what I just needed to hear the drum and to hear the flute. I want to acknowledge the Young Thunder drum group, particularly the young gentleman in the middle of the drum group, and I want to acknowledge that generational participation. Prior to going to Angel, I just wanted to do a high-level summary of day 2. We had a very eventful day, and some of the key messages that we heard was to ensure that we study what matters. If your studies are about everything, then they're about nothing. So being really clear about what you're going to be studying. We heard the term walking on 2 legs or two-eyed seeing, where we make space for both traditional ecological knowledge alongside of Western science. Also, we heard from Chief Ian Campbell about moving beyond consultation to consent and to getting the agreement of the Indigenous peoples whose territories that are being affected by development. Our process is only as good as the level of data that we generate and the metrics that we use to measure our progress. So baselines, data, and metrics are central to good strategic direction. We've heard the need to ground ourselves in our medicines, our sacred practices, our spirituality, and our strength comes from our identity and how we are inextricably connected with the territories in which we live. We're stewards of the land, and as stewards of the land, that comes with a great responsibility, a responsibility that is passed from generation to generation. We know that oftentimes, due to colonization, our people have been marginalized within the periphery of the socioeconomic fabric of their territories. So essentially, how do we ensure that we are meaningfully engaged in those activities that affect our ability to exercise our title and our rights? Collaboration is at the core of everything that we do here. Collaboration between Indigenous nations and Indigenous groups, but also collaboration with the provincial, federal crowns, the territorial governments, industry, and small business, recognizing that none of us are as smart as all of us. We do know that governments come and go and policies change, legislation changes. The only thing that endures is the relationships that we create with one another. So, we really need to focus on establishing those relationships that are founded on trust, reciprocity, and respect. If you have a challenge within your relationship with another person, within your family unit, your organization, your community, oftentimes it hinges upon poor communication. So we heard about the need to have whole community engagement, where you reach out to all people within your community, both those that live at home and those that live away from home, to ensure that they are meaningfully engaged, using clear, concise, and relevant communication materials to communicate with people that where they're at in the process, and making sure that you have a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to knowledge building and developing the capacity at the individual, family, organizational, and community levels. So a really good a day yesterday. Today, we're going to be breaking into small breakout groups. And this is an opportunity for us to hear directly from you about multiple topics that have been identified as important to the conference's effort. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Angel. And I want Angel, if I could ask you to please introduce the breakout group exercise, as well as the FNMPC video that we will be viewing as we get into breakout groups. Angel?
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon if you're out on the eastern part of the nation. I just wanted to really express my gratitude for the drum group video that we had just watched, acknowledging Young Thunder, and they are a group out of oh, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Thunderchild First Nation in Saskatchewan. That's where that group is from. And one of the young fellows that are drumming or sit on our board of directors for the First Nations Major Project Coalition. They're just fabulous. And like Dan said, I really love seeing the young boys and really hearing his voice in there. Good morning. So we are going to go through this exercise this afternoon, today, to like Dan said, harvest some feedback. And the way it's going to work is, I'm sure you've noticed, we've got some AV and some tech crews working behind the scenes here to assist us in making this conference happen. And so they've created 2 virtual rooms. And they are going to divide us in random order. I'm not exactly sure how that works in the background. I'm not the technician here, but we're going to be split into 2 groups right after this video that we're going to share. And pardon me. Once we're in the group, I will be facilitating one group with the support of Janice Zietz, who is with the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. So we're working as a team. So I'll be facilitating the discussions, and she will be assisting with taking notes so that when it comes to the report out, we have the information that you will be providing with us. And then in room 2, so I'll be in room 2 with Janice. In room 1, which I forgot, I guess to mention now, if you prefer to speak in French, the French audio line will be connected to room 1, and they've been monitoring stuff in the background. So my understanding is they will put the French, the people that prefer to speak and engage in French in room 1. So Trevor Smith, who is my colleague, he is part of the First Nations Major Project Coalition Environmental Stewardship Technical Team. I'll allow him to introduce himself in his room more in detail when he gets there, but he will be the facilitator for room 1. And working with him will be Jordan Kinnear from the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada as well, in similar fashion. So we're going to break into 2 groups just so we can manage the group sizes better. But each group are going to be asked the exact same questions, one right after another. And we're going to allow for up to 30 minutes per topic for discussion and note taking. And then we will have a break in which it'll allow us, the facilitators and note takers, a few minutes to regroup ourselves so that when we come back from the break, we are able to do a clear, concise report out of what we've heard and to make sure that what you said is what we are hearing. And so hopefully that makes sense. So there's 2 facilitators, 2 note takers, 2 rooms, and they're going to divide us once we're done watching this upcoming video. I did send out the breakout questions via email again this morning so that it was on the top of your inbox, because I know we probably all get 100 emails a day. So we've got those prepared, and I will be doing a screen share in my room so that they are displayed right in front of you as we work through discussions. So that's how the breakout group discussions are going to occur virtually. If that's not clear, please let me know through the chat function. But then the next thing I would like to speak to is we had added a video to the agenda that was created by the First Nations Major Project Coalition. So as part of the Indigenous Capacity Support Program funding that the Impact Assessment Agency put a call out for, we also applied for some of that funding to start building tools and guidance for our First Nation members to help them navigate their way through the new federal impact assessment process. And so we created a guide and an 8-part video series for First Nations to utilize to help understand what this new process means. And so being that it's 8 videos long, we're not going to show all of them, but I heard a lot about the importance around assessing project impacts to Indigenous, Inuit, Métis rights, what have you, and the importance of really understanding what matters most in terms of value components for your respective territories and communities. I really heard that loud and clear through Melody's presentation. And really at the end of the day, this video does speak to assessing impacts to rights, being that that's the overarching purpose of why we do impact assessments, is to ensure that our rights aren't being infringed, and if there are impacts, that they are mitigated or avoided. And so I chose our last video of the series, which speaks to assessing impacts to rights. So just to provide some context. And yeah, so we're ready to show the video, and right as soon as we're done the video, we're going to break into our groups, just so you know. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to the breakout sessions.
Assessing impacts on Indigenous rights. Fighting for the recognition of Aboriginal treaty rights and for the protection of those rights continues to be a hard-fought struggle for Indigenous nations across Canada.
For our part, I think that what comes from that is that we feel like that we have done our best to protect the land, because as stewards of the land, that's our birthright, is to steward the lands and to try and take care of the lands. And even though we have been deprived of doing that for many years, it's still at the core of our belief system.
New federal requirements have the potential to give Indigenous nations a greater role when it comes to assessing the impacts of major projects on Aboriginal and treaty rights.
One of the most exciting things from a practitioner's perspective about the new Act is that for the first time, the federal government requires a proper assessment of rights impacts. This is a sea change in the way that rights impacts are going to be considered. They were considered very much in an ad hoc fashion previously. In the past, the government was primarily responsible for conducting that rights impact assessment. Now the government has promised that it will focus on the nation-to-nation relationship during that impact assessment. The parties that signed a treaty should be the ones talking about the rights impact of a project. So that's an important step as well.
An Indigenous-led rights impact assessment can provide the opportunity to build a holistic picture of the impacts a major project may have on your nation's rights and territory, and what can be done to address those impacts. Within the government's new legislation and policy framework for assessing impacts to rights, there is opportunity for Indigenous nations to co-develop an Indigenous rights assessment, achieve greater transparency and clarity about a project's impacts on rights, bring an Indigenous perspective into the assessment of impacts to rights, and better inform dialogue about measures needed to accommodate impacts.
To me, Aboriginal rights is protecting my way of life. Like I said earlier, our connections to the land, the rights that we enjoy, whether it be cultural, language, hunting, fishing, gathering. You know, it is protected under Section 35, but are they being fully protected?
This new opportunity to lead and collaborate with the federal government in a rights impact assessment represents a major change from the past. But to be prepared to lead a rights impact assessment, nations need to start developing their own rights assessment protocols before a major project is even proposed in their territories, to ensure that the nation's own requirements can be clearly communicated to both government and project proponents at the time an assessment begins.
Now, it's still going to be incumbent on the communities to define those rights, take control over the rights impact assessment process. And in order to do that, you need to have a plan in place, and you have to have funds in place, and as early as possible in the process. But there's a lot of potential there. I don't think that I'm overestimating when I say that it's an entire new branch of the impact assessment. Anyone that thinks that under the new Federal Impact Assessment Act, rights impact assessment is going to add 2 or 3 or 4% more work or effort required is fooling themselves. This is an entire new branch of the impact assessment.
If your nation is prepared, then its voice will have maximum impact on the project throughout the process. For more information, go to our website to watch more videos in this series and download the Coalition's new guide to effective Indigenous involvement in federal impact assessment. Please feel free to contact us at any time. The Coalition is here to help.
Excellent. Great video encapsulating much of what we've been discussing over the past few days. I'm wondering whether Trevor or Angel, which one of your breakout rooms wants to report out first?
Me.
Angel, go.
I beat you to the punch, Trevor. I'm all jacked up right now. I'm like, I gotta say what's on my mind before I forget. Just kidding. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back to our big group here. We had a fruitful discussion in our breakout session. We do acknowledge there's time limitations within these events, and I know there could probably be much more said, but this is just the start of a conversation, and hopefully we'll all reconnect in one way or another afterwards. So our group around topic A, of governance for Indigenous leadership and collaboration and impact assessment. One of the comments that we'd heard is the frustration and lack of awareness on federal government funding programs that are out there that exist to help communities build their internal capacities. An idea that came about was maybe, and in a dream world, the federal government creating a one-stop shop, so to speak, of where Indigenous nations can go and find funding for what purpose and where they can apply for it. And with that would come, they wouldn't miss out on funding opportunities. Therefore, they would access funds to further develop their internal capacities. And we had a really big discussion around governance and the need for communities to develop their internal governance structures so that they can make informed decisions. And we realize, I'd use the example of even that is a task of its own, of getting your internal community agreeing on a process through consensus can be a challenge, as there's out here in BC, it's unceded that we've got the elected chief and council system, but not only that, we've got our hereditary systems. And how do we get those two systems internally to work together to come to decisions? And then how do you also communicate out the importance of being inclusive of that decision-making model to government, that, you know, if your community chooses to take that integrated approach between hereditary and elected officials, who does the federal government go to? And so that was a big discussion in our group around being prepared to address it internally and then communicate it out externally, and having a one-stop shop as to where you can find the funds to start developing those structures and processes. And in closing, just also around the ideas of co-management and co-development and recognition of authority through legislation. And so there's a need for federal government to work on that nation to nation scale, government to government. So I'll leave it at that for now. We had a lot of discussion. So that was what I heard from our group. Topic B around impact assessments through an Indigenous lens. The idea of taking a watershed approach to conducting assessments came up, looking at the cumulative effects scale, looking at the big picture rather than a project by project approach, rather than being cut by 1,000 knives, so to speak. And so that was one idea that we had talked about, is really taking that holistic approach and thinking as Indigenous people and taking it into the process through a cumulative effects assessment approach. And another point that we had heard, really great discussion again around pushing the concept of intangible that often is neglected and negated in these processes. Quite often these processes look at assessing the biophysical, but not so much the spiritual, the impacts that they may have on the spirit, the culture, the practices of Indigenous people. So really encouraging government to think outside the box and understand that we do have to measure these impacts on the intangible, because it's important to us as who we are as people. It shapes us, it defines us. And in closing, for this one, another idea was just having a database of your traditional knowledge or uses or interests in one place as a starting point. So when impact assessments are there, you can access your database and look at where the project's being proposed and start the conversation there. That was another best practice idea, is the creation of that. And then for topic C in closing, around impact assessments, tools, and supports. Again, this idea of having a database, not just for information, but your maps and your knowledge, and maybe designing a matrix so that you can measure the level of impacts. We'd heard this idea of like red, yellow, green that's used in this database to observe. So a project's proposed, you look at it on this map, and if it crosses a red line, that means that's just like a no-go zone. It fractured. There's something that's already been fractured that just can no longer further be impacted, etc. So again, this database to look at the geospatial data, to house policies and procedures that can be accessed at any given time, that provide the foundation to starting a process. And again, just the idea of developing your baseline data, pre-contact, contact, and for project specific information. So some really great discussion. We will be summarizing this in a short, sweet summary to report out after the conference, and we'll share this all with you when we get there. So thank you. I'll leave it at that. Over to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Angel. Dan, I've got half an hour, right?
No, you don't, Trevor.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep it short. We had a very full conversation here. We had representatives from Tsleil-Waututh in British Columbia on the coast here, from blood tribes in southern Alberta, folks from Ontario with Matawa, and also with the Keepers of the Circle in Northeast Ontario, and others. And we had a full conversation, especially on topic A, which is related to governance and components of governance that are important to ensure meaningful involvement and collaboration opportunities and impact assessment. And some of the key themes that came up were the challenges that between timelines and capacity and funding. Those three topics keep coming back. There was an acknowledgement. There was a very proponent-driven process. Only the proponent in areas of many of the phases of the new Impact Assessment Act, the proponent essentially has to request to stop. It's not something the agency can do on their own under the new legislation. So there was a concern about whether communities have that capacity to receive. It's something that was brought up. Again, timing, funding, and capacity. The challenges of First Nations getting the funding in time in order to be adequately involved in those processes. Some of the proposed governance components so that communities aren't needing to be reinventing the wheel, that some of the members brought up, or participants brought up in this session, was having sort of a community engagement, decision-making process in place, setting up with focus groups that's focused on capacity building in the community, as well as information sharing and ultimately decision-making. Brittany from Tsleil-Waututh spoke about their stewardship policy, which communicates clearly to proponents that want to do business in their territory. One, what is Tsleil-Waututh's consultation area, and what is the funding requirements that are required in order for that proponent to do work in their territory? That essentially they have a policy, an outward-looking one that speaks to Tsleil-Waututh's stewardship responsibilities and jurisdiction, and looking for the proponents to collaborate with them if they want to do business, and to provide the funding to ensure that capacity is there up front. On the next topic B, which had to do with sort of themes, key themes in impact assessment. Marcy spoke quite extensively about cumulative effects and the legacy of cumulative effects in the territory. Brenda spoke to issues related to gender-based analysis, and the critical piece that even when that work is done, what's really important is to make sure that there is a adequate monitoring and compliance with any conditions that are set out in the environmental assessment. If there isn't a follow through on those commitments, then the work that has been undertaken during the impact assessment won't be realized. I think everybody acknowledged, again, just to sort of back to this, is that ultimately effective involvement, effective collaboration in this process is connected to adequate funding and adequate capacity at the front end, but also all through every stage, right through to monitoring and follow-up, to ensure that at every stage there's a meaningful opportunity for nations to be leading and collaborating in this process. I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Thank you, Trevor. Dan, before you jump in here, there was a question that I would like to pose to Susan Winger, just for our tech guys, if you can give her the ability to unmute her mic, please. Susan, Joe from our breakout session had asked if you can share a little bit of information, or not a little bit, but information about the Indigenous Knowledge Policy Framework. So if you can just provide some info on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. Sure, no problem. I think many of you may have been involved in the past year or two in some of the engagement that was done around the development of a interdepartmental Indigenous Knowledge Policy Framework. So this was a document that we wanted to develop across all of the departments that were involved in Bill C-68 and C-69. So that included the Agency for the New Impact Assessment Act, the Canadian Energy Regulator for their new legislation, Fisheries and Oceans for the changes to their act, as well as Transport Canada for the changes to the Navigable Waters Act. So the goal was to create an overarching policy framework around Indigenous knowledge. And the reason being, all four of those pieces of legislation have the same provisions in the new provisions in relation to Indigenous knowledge. So mandatory consideration, protection of Indigenous knowledge. So we did that engagement process mostly in 2019. And we're now working on publishing a draft framework that would be available for comment. Hopefully by spring, we'll have that out. We've been working quite a bit with the agency's Indigenous Advisory Committee, which Angel's a member of, and so is Melody. And so they're involved in providing some advice on that. Their initial advice is up on the website already. If you go to the agency's website, there are links to our Indigenous Advisory Committee's work. So that's where that's at. We're kind of in the late stages now of having a document ready to go out, and we'll certainly be reaching out and communicating with all the communities across Canada to let folks know when that's available for comment.
Thank you, Susan. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much. As evidenced by Angel's previous comments, there's going to be a summary report produced for the proceedings. But what I wanted to do is just take a moment before I go to Angel and Susan for next steps. I wanted to take a moment to just speak at a high level of some of the themes that I have heard generated over our 3 days together. We heard the themes that I've identified are capacity building, collaboration, and communication. So when we think about capacity building, by definition, Capacity building is a measurable improvement in our ability to fulfill our mission through a blend of sound management, strong governance, and dedication to assessing and achieving our results. So when we talk about capacity over the last 3 days, capacity, we need capacity in terms of our organizational infrastructures, how we do our work together. We need capacity support in the area of management and governance, because good governance sets the tone for the different work that is going to be undertaken by the group, and paying particular attention to staff and member capacity. So what capacity do our outward-facing, front-facing staff require, and what capacity do our members, our citizens require to be able to meaningfully participate in these opportunities that are put in front of them? Really impressed with the presentations that we received over the past three days. We attempted to learn from one another, share our successes, and identify impediments that we can overcome together. I want to make particular note to meaningful participation of and support for women and matriarchs in this process. Myself, I come from a matrilineal society where we hold our women in high regard. And, I think it's us men who have messed things up, and it's going to be the women who are going to fix things and get the earth back on track. Collaboration, we know, is at the heart of everything that we do. And yet at times it's nearly impossible to make it work. So we know that we're dealing with human interactions, and human interactions are never straightforward. So we got to make sure that we address misunderstandings, competing priorities, and again, make space for us to be able to do this important work now in a long distance manner. We're having to do virtual communication, virtual engagement. I don't see that stopping anytime soon. And even once we're able to begin to interact face to face with one another, when we've addressed the impacts of the pandemic, I still think that people are going to be using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and other virtual platforms, right? So I think us being able to get more adept and proficient at virtual communication and engagement will hold us in high regard for our future. So when you think about collaboration, it's like, how do you work together to set clear goals and objectives? How do you begin to communicate your intentions? How do you listen and learn to compromise with one another? How do you overcome challenges and solve problems without assigning blame to one another? Just give me a second here. I lost myself. What? I was just on such a good roll there too, wasn't I? Being open-minded, not locking on to a particular way of viewing the world, but open your mind up to other possibilities. And, one of the things that I really want to do here today is to raise my hands in respect and celebration to all of you. We don't celebrate our collaboration and the successes that they bring enough, right? So I want to celebrate each of you and the work that you undertake on a daily basis in this space. So common elements of collaboration that we've shared include common vision, shared goals and values, distributed leadership, sharing of power, and reflective practice, recognizing that none of us are as smart as all of us. The other piece around communication, common refrains that we hear within our communities is, I didn't know, nobody told me, right? So essentially what you need to be able to do is to over communicate with your members, with your citizens, creating multiple feedback loops to ensure that information is going out to your people and that you are indeed gathering the information that you require to inform, inspire, and influence the work that you're moving forward. So we know that just delivering a message is not enough. It must meet the purpose of the sender. So we've heard examples of ways to engage people through focus groups, one-on-one dialogues, coffee talks, land-based meetings, surveys, workshops, and conferences. There's different tools and methods that we can use, social media, to be able to get our information out. Communication, there's 7 common C's of communication, making sure that our communication is clear, it's concise, it's concrete, it's correct, it's coherent, it's complete, and that it's courteous. And one of the things that I've learned when I used to provide support to my nation My late auntie, Chief Gootlat, she used to say to me, Danny, slow down when you're talking. You talk like a Philadelphia lawyer. Nobody understands what you're saying. So essentially what we've heard is being able to speak at the level of your audience and provide them easily accessible communication tools and communication collateral. So in sum, the right thought plus the right people in the right environment at the right time for the right reason gives us the right result. So thank you very much for the opportunity to walk alongside you during this conference. And now I'll turn it over to you, Angel and Susan, to identify some of the next steps that we're going to be taking. Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't need to repeat what Dan had just said, as he did a wonderful job of recapping and summarizing the conference to close today. Pardon me, I hope you don't hear my dog in the background. The mailman is here right now. It's my dog's daily excitement. Anyways, I just really, again, want to express my gratitude for everyone for participating and being interested in this very important work that we do to ensure our voices are heard in these processes and reflected, and that we are doing our best job to make free, prior, and informed decisions and provide that consent at the end of the day to uphold our Aboriginal and treaty rights. And again, it is we are all connected, and I heard that very loud and clear through this conference. And the inspiring ideas and input that I'd heard just in the discussion group, as short as it was in time span, was so valuable in providing that direction and input to the government so that we can work together in a better way, in a more collaborative way. And so I just really admire and respect each one of you that do this hard work, because I know as a practitioner myself, I know it's not easy, that we have so much other things going on in our day-to-day lives. And I just really always uphold this motto of the coalition that I work with is, we are stronger together. And I just would like to leave it at that. Some of the next steps that the coalition will do, again, will just be summarizing the input that we've heard, and we will work with the agency to finalize that, and we will circulate that through email. And so I will leave it at that for now. Again, nice meeting you virtually. I hope to reconnect with you guys throughout email or what have you.
Thank you, Angel. Susan?
Yeah, thanks. I just had a few thoughts to close it out before we talked a bit about next steps. So really great conference, and really huge thanks to the coalition for organizing this first conference with us. I think it was a really great success. Our primary hope with this conference was to create a forum where you can all share with each other and learn from what's happening across the country. And I really think we made some good starts on that. As an agency, we're also keen to hear about your challenges and what you need from us to better deliver this program, not only through funding, but other ways of working with you, delivering training, adapting our own products, thinking about how we do consultation and impact assessment in a way that supports your ability to engage. Really great presentations. We'll be looking at ways to bring this back to others in the agency. We heard some really great ideas around, what support you need in your communities to develop capacity by putting policies in place, land use plans, stewardship, structures for monitoring, not just project impacts, but also commitments made through projects, things that the agency can do in the process to help, like adapting our communications to the audience, as Dan was mentioning. Asking the right questions, respecting the roles of leadership and elders, and trying to address expectations of proponents in the pre-planning engagement. I think that's a really key area we could do more work to help communities be prepared when the clock starts. Just also picking up on Dan mentioning the importance of collaboration. And I think a big piece of building capacity to do collaboration in impact assessments is to be talking like we are here outside of projects, and just establishing that relationship in advance. So I mentioned on the first day that one of the ways we're hoping to do this is getting agreements in place in advance so that we can talk to you about how you want to be working with us before projects land in your territories. So I guess just to close, I'll encourage you all to continue pursuing the connections that you've made today. Keep in touch with us if there's other opportunities or ideas that we can look at to help support maintaining this network that we're establishing here. And one plan that we do have is to do another event like this in the fall or winter of next year. So we'll be communicating further about that. So again, thanks to all of you for your really great engagement, and to all the presenters. And back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Susan. Angel?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I just had one more thing to quickly mention. We will be housing the video presentations and the PowerPoint presentations on the First Nations Major Projects Coalition website. We just have to do some of our homework and actually setting up a page dedicated to this conference. But once we got everything posted, which will be in the near future, I will ensure to follow up through email to provide you with the webpage link so that you can peruse at your own leisure and yeah, have access to the conference materials. So that's all I have to say. Back to you, Dan. I believe Kelly has something she's going to share.
Thank you. Kelly?
Hi, everyone. We just wanted to ask if you could please take some time that at the end of this conference, if you could fill out a feedback survey for us, it would be really helpful so that we can improve how we host conferences in a virtual setting and ensure that your valued time is used the most effectively and you're getting the information that's most important and relevant to you. So I'll just put the survey in the chat box, and there's just a couple questions. If you don't mind just taking a few minutes to fill that out for us, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you everyone for your participation here. Verna, our elder, is not available here today, and I want to just open it up to any of the participants if they wanted to offer a closing prayer on behalf of the group. You can use your raise hand function if somebody would like to do that for us. I'm not seeing anything. Over to Elder Angel.
I turned into an elder overnight. I've always been wise beyond my years, so I consider that an honor. Yeah, apologies. We were just a bit, sorry, stuttering, a bit ahead of schedule, and Verna just unfortunately had a time conflict today. Otherwise, she would be here joining us. But I've made an offering of tobacco to honor our ancestors. And so in closing, I'd just like to say a little prayer to send us all on our way. So Creator, I thank you for this event. It's been very encouraging and inspirational, and I'm thankful for the participants that have joined us to participate in this event, and the facilitators. And if you've had to travel, even though it's a virtual setting, I ask for prayers that you have safe travels home, and that you leave the conference with a light heart and some good information and some new networks. And closing, all my relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Take good care.
We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Call me.